The city streets were alive with the rush of everyday life, people hurrying past, lost in their own worlds, the noise of car engines, footsteps, and distant conversations filling the air. It was the kind of place where no one noticed anyone unless they were looking for something or someone. Among the crowd, a man walked slowly, his hands tucked into the pockets of a worn-out jacket, the fabric faded from years of use. His military insignia, frayed at the edges, caught the light but went mostly unnoticed. He was in his 50s, his face etched with the quiet weight of a man who'd lived through things he didn't often talk about. The deep lines on his face weren't just from age, they were from battles fought, some on the front lines, others in his own mind. He didn't smile much, didn't say much. He preferred the solitude of his thoughts, the comfort of being unnoticed. As he walked past a park bench, something caught his attention. A young woman, no older than 25, sat with her face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking. Her sobs were quiet but unmistakable. People walked by, oblivious, but something inside the veteran stirred. Without thinking, he slowed his pace, his eyes softening as he approached. The veteran paused for a brief moment, his eyes fixed on the young woman. There was something about her, something that made him want to help, even though he wasn't used to stepping into other people's pain. He had seen his share of heartbreak in his life, but he knew how powerful even the smallest act of kindness could be. His military training had taught him to look out for others, to protect, to listen when no one else would. And now, here he was, drawn to a stranger. He cleared his throat and spoke gently, yet firmly, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had faced many difficult situations. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone soft but full of concern. At first, she didn't respond. The woman's sobs softened, but she kept her head down, her hands still covering her face. It took a few moments before she finally looked up, her red, puffy eyes meeting his gaze. She looked startled, as though no one had ever bothered to notice her before. She blinked, clearly unsure of what to say. The veteran shifted, his large frame settling beside her on the bench. He took off his old jacket, its edges frayed from years of wear, and draped it over her shoulders like a makeshift blanket. "You look cold," he murmured, his hands lingering for a moment, offering warmth that wasn't just physical. "No, it's okay," she whispered, but her voice cracked, and she pulled the jacket tighter around herself. He didn't push her. Instead, he sat silently beside her, allowing the quiet to settle between them. After a few minutes, she spoke, her voice barely audible. I don't know how much more I can take. Everything is falling apart." Her shoulders shook again as she began to open up, her words tumbling out in fragments, about the loss of her job, the struggle to make ends meet, the loneliness that seemed to swallow her whole. The veteran listened, his expression steady and understanding. He didn't ask too many questions, knowing that sometimes, people just needed someone to hear them. Over the next few weeks, the veteran made it a habit to stop by the park where Sarah sat, whether it was early in the morning or later in the afternoon. Each time he would bring something small, a warm cup of coffee, a sandwich from the nearby deli, or even a book he thought she might enjoy. Sometimes he'd just sit quietly beside her, allowing the silence to speak more than any words could. It became their unspoken routine. Sarah, at first hesitant, began to trust him little by little. She noticed how he never judged her, never rushed her to open up. The small acts of kindness he offered, each one given without expecting anything in return, gradually began to break through the walls she'd built around herself. She started looking forward to his visits, even if it was just a brief moment of quiet companionship. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the trees, Sarah finally opened up more. She shifted in her seat, taking a slow breath as she looked at the veteran. "I don't know where to start," she began. Her voice quieter than usual. The veteran gave her an understanding nod, his eyes focused on her but without pressure. "I lost my job a couple of months ago," she continued, her gaze drifting to the ground. "I worked at a small marketing firm, but they let me go. Things haven't been easy since. I'm behind on rent, and I have no family nearby. I don't even feel like I belong here anymore." She laughed bitterly, but it wasn't a happy sound. "I feel so out of place, like I'm invisible." The veteran, his hands folded in his lap, listened without interrupting. His eyes softened, and for the first time, he shared something personal with her. I understand more than you think, he said, his voice calm but thick with the weight of the past. I've lost more than a job, I've lost friends, brothers really. They were there with me through everything, but I never got the chance to say goodbye. After I came back from serving, I felt like I didn't belong either, like everything I knew before had changed. He paused, as though collecting his thoughts. I came back to a world that felt unfamiliar, and I didn't know how to fit in anymore. He looked at her then, his voice softer. Sometimes it feels like the loneliness will swallow you whole. Sarah met his gaze, and for the first time, she saw not just a stranger, but someone who truly understood. There was a deep, unspoken bond between them, both of them grappling with isolation, with loss. They may have come from different walks of life, but in that moment, they were the same two people seeking a sense of belonging, two souls quietly aching for connection. And somehow, despite their struggles, they both found it in each other. One afternoon, as the two sat on their usual bench in the park, the conversation turned to Sarah's childhood. She had been speaking softly about her late mother, a woman who had always been her rock, even through her own struggles. She was strong, Sarah said with a quiet smile, though her eyes betrayed a sadness that was hard to hide. She always made sure I was okay, even when she wasn't. She passed away a few years ago. Cancer. She paused, her voice wavering. Her name was Emily Johnson. The moment the name left her lips, the veteran's heart skipped a beat. It was as if the world around him had paused. His eyes widened slightly, his hand tightening around the coffee cup he had been holding. He didn't say anything at first, his mind spinning with the sudden, unexplainable connection. Emily Johnson. That name had haunted him for years, he hadn't heard it in so long, and it struck him with a force that he couldn't quite explain. His mind immediately flashed back to a mission he had served on in the Middle East many years ago, one of the most dangerous, chaotic missions he'd ever been a part of. A young woman, barely out of her teens, had been part of the unit. She had been one of the few survivors when things went terribly wrong. He remembered the moment with vivid clarity, how she had risked everything to save him. The memory flooded back in an overwhelming rush. She had pulled him to safety during a firefight, carrying him when he couldn't move, dragging him through the mud and debris, shielding him from the enemy's fire. He hadn't known her full name at the time, only that she had been the kind of soldier who did whatever it took. She never asked for praise or recognition, she just did her job, saving lives, even at the cost of her own. The veteran blinked hard, trying to steady himself as the realization hit him with the force of a punch. Could it be? Could this woman, sitting beside him on the bench, be the daughter of the woman who had saved his life? The woman he had never been able to properly thank, the woman who had disappeared after the mission without a trace. He felt his chest tighten with a mixture of guilt and gratitude. His memories of that day were blurred by time, but the moment he had shared with Emily Johnson in that chaotic life-or-death situation felt like a bond that would never fade. And now, sitting next to him, was the daughter of the woman who had given him another chance at life. Sarah's voice broke through his reverie. I guess I never really told anyone much about her. She was a hero to me, even though she never let anyone know how much she'd gone through. I don't even know if anyone really understood the weight she carried after her service. I think she was always hiding parts of herself, never wanting to burden me with her past. The veteran felt a lump form in his throat. What could he say? How could he explain the depth of what he was feeling? His mind was racing, every emotion pulling him in a different direction. Gratitude for the woman who had saved him. Guilt for never having reached out to thank her, to find out what had happened to her. And now, here was Sarah, her daughter, sitting right beside him. It was almost too much to process. The veteran cleared his throat, his voice suddenly thick with emotion. You don't know this, Sarah, but your mother, she saved my life. His words came out slowly, as if each one carried the weight of years. During a mission in the Middle East, she pulled me out of harm's way when I couldn't move, when I thought I was done. I never got to thank her. I never got to say how much she meant to me. Sarah looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. She opened her mouth to speak but faltered, her expression caught between shock and confusion. What do you mean? She asked softly. The veteran's eyes softened, his heart aching. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. I never knew her full name. I didn't know she had a daughter. But now, here you are. I've carried the memory of that day with me for so long, and now I know who she was. You were part of that, part of the reason I'm here today." The weight of the moment hung heavy between them. Both of them were still processing the incredible coincidence that had brought them together, two people tied by a shared past neither had expected. The veteran's emotions were raw gratefulness for the woman who had saved him, and an overwhelming sense of guilt for never properly acknowledging the debt he owed to Emily. As Sarah stared at him, a realization slowly crept into her expression. She hadn't known the full story of her mother's heroism. But now, sitting beside the man whose life her mother had saved, she was beginning to understand. The bond between them was deeper than she could have ever imagined. The veteran couldn't shake the weight of the truth any longer. It had been gnawing at him ever since he first heard Sarah's mother's name. The realization that Emily Johnson, the woman who had saved his life, was Sarah's mother. He knew he had to tell her. The time had come to confront the truth, no matter how difficult it might be. The next day they met again, the usual spot in the park where they'd shared so many quiet moments together. The air was crisp, a light breeze rustling the leaves around them. Sarah looked up from her book as he approached, offering her a small smile. But the veteran wasn't smiling this time. He had something important to say, something that weighed heavier on him than anything else. "Sarah," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "There's something I need to tell you, about your mom, about me, about what happened a long time ago." His words hung in the air, heavy and serious. Sarah looked up from the pages, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" she asked, sensing the shift in his tone. The veteran took a deep breath, his chest tightening as memories flooded back. He could still see it so clearly, the chaos of that mission, the sound of gunfire, the feel of Emily Johnson's hands pulling him from the brink of death. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his thoughts before continuing. "I served in the military," he began, his voice thickening with each word, "and I was in a mission in the Middle East. It was a dangerous one. Things went wrong, really wrong. I was pinned down, couldn't move, couldn't get out. There was a young soldier with me, a woman. Her name was Emily Johnson." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise, and she leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "My mom," she breathed, her heart starting to race. The veteran nodded, his eyes distant as he recalled the moment. "Your mom, she saved my life that day. She dragged me out of there when I couldn't move, carried me, shielded me from the enemy. She risked everything for me. And I never got the chance to thank her. I never knew her full name. I didn't know she had a daughter. I didn't know what kind of person she really was." Sarah sat back, her mind reeling. The words felt impossible to grasp. She had never heard her mother speak of her past in the military, never known the depths of the sacrifices Emily had made. Her mother had always been so private, so guarded about the life she had before Sarah came into the picture. She had never shared the horrors of war, never mentioned her heroic actions. It was as if those pieces of her life had been sealed off, hidden away forever. "She never talked about it," Sarah murmured, her voice barely audible. "She never told me any of this, about what she did for you. She never even said anything about her time in the military. It was like that part of her life never existed." The veteran looked at Sarah, guilt in his eyes. "I wish I had known more. I wish I could have thanked her properly. I've carried that regret for so long, and now that I know you, I feel like I'm finally mourning her loss in a way I never could before." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she listened, her chest tightening. The flood of emotions hit her all at once, the pride she felt for her mother's bravery, the heartbreak that came from never knowing the full extent of her sacrifice, and the overwhelming sorrow of having lost her too soon. She had always known her mother was strong, but this was something she could never have imagined. The veteran shifted, his eyes searching for the right words. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have reached out sooner, tried to find her after the war. I should have told her how much she meant to me. But I didn't, and I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life." The silence between them grew heavy, thick with the weight of shared grief. Neither of them knew what to say next. There were no words that could erase the years of missed opportunities, the absence of closure. But in that silence, something else passed between them, a quiet understanding. The bond that had started with small gestures of kindness, with the simple acts of offering warmth and comfort, had grown deeper. It wasn't just about two strangers finding solace in each other's company anymore. It was about two people connected by the same thread of loss, of love that had been hidden, of a past that had shaped them both in ways they never fully understood until now. As the minutes passed, they both sat there, lost in their own thoughts, but somehow more connected than they had been before. Sarah's heart ached, but she also felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Her mother's legacy, her bravery, her selflessness, had never been fully realized in Sarah's life until now. And in that moment, she could feel her mother's presence beside her, watching over them both. The veteran reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're not alone, Sarah. You never have been." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything they had both experienced. And for the first time Sarah believed it. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. In the weeks that followed their emotional conversation, Sarah and the veteran continued to meet regularly. The bond between them, once fragile and uncertain, had solidified into something deeper. They had both shared parts of their past that they had never expected to open up about, and it had brought them closer in ways they hadn't imagined. Sarah, who had once felt like a stranger in her own city, began to find hope again. The weight of her mother's secret bravery, combined with the veteran's unwavering support, gave her the strength to start rebuilding her life. She found a part-time job at a local cafe and began to see the possibilities before her, the dreams that had once seemed so out of reach now beginning to take shape. The veteran, too, felt a shift. He had lived with a quiet, gnawing pain for years, never fully healing from the trauma of war, but now, with Sarah's friendship, he was finally able to let go of some of the grief he had carried. He found a sense of peace he hadn't thought was possible. Through Sarah, he found a renewed purpose, helping her heal while in turn, healing himself. They started volunteering at local shelters, offering their time to help others who were struggling. The work wasn't easy, but it felt right. It reminded them both of the love and courage that Emily had shown them, her selflessness, her quiet strength, her ability to make a difference in the lives of others without asking for anything in return. It was as if Emily's legacy had been passed on to them, and they were carrying it forward in a way that would make her proud. One evening, as they sat outside after a long day of volunteering, the veteran looked up at the sky, the stars beginning to twinkle above them. He felt a sense of closure, a peace he hadn't known in years, and somehow, he knew that Emily was still watching over them, proud of the way they had come together to help others. A sense of purpose filled his heart. He had finally found his place in the world, not in the past, but in the future, a future where he wasn't alone. And Sarah, sitting beside him, felt the same. Together they had healed and found a new beginning. Thank you so much for watching this deeply emotional story about the unexpected bond between a veteran and a woman who unknowingly carried a powerful connection to his past. Their journey of healing, discovery, and selflessness shows just how interconnected our lives truly are, even when we least expect it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your friends and family. Let's spread the message of kindness, courage, and the strength we find in helping one another. And if you want to see more heartfelt stories like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey. Thank you again for watching.